Welcome back to Diablo, everyone. We are here once again with Yonas, who's not at his normal setup. We'll get into that probably pretty soon, as well as Hrvoje, who is in rather close proximity to Yonas right now. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. I have not slept in a bed in a little while, but I'm glad to finally be back in Europe. I'm currently in Lille right now for the upcoming regional.
Uh, I'm doing fine. It's a bit sweaty here in Zagreb, but as you can see, I did a little upgrade that was much requested in the comments. So hopefully my audio will not torture your ears anymore. And I will soon be joining Jonas in Lille as I will be traveling on Friday morning. But yeah, maybe I need to get a little bit of French up to speed.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to join you guys in Lille, but maybe someday, that'll be a lot of fun. You know what would actually get me to go to Europe is if there were 3v3s, which is a whole another topic, but maybe someday. Regardless, so in this episode, we're going to be talking about the OP16 leaders, first impressions on the leaders, as well as some of the cards have been revealed, so we'll talk maybe about how the leaders are going to function with some of these cards in mind, maybe talk about what some of these decks may need, especially because some of these leaders we haven't seen all too much support, thoughts here and there. But one thing that we do want to start, and something that we can also get the community to sort of interact with a little bit on these podcast videos, is that at the start of each episode, we want to talk we want to answer at least one question from you guys. This time we pulled from Twitter, but for the next episode, let us know in the comments a question that you want to ask us, whether it's about the game or not about the game. For example, someone wanted Hrvoje to go bald, but that's not a question.
It's happening naturally, man. Give it time.
And one of us will pick your question and present it to the rest of the group for the first time to answer candidly on the spot. So I prepared a question for you guys to start this off. And I think it's more of a sort of timeless question, not specifically about the current meta or anything, but I do think it is an interesting question to ask someone who is, of course, at a very high skill level. And this is from Repose from Twitter. How do y'all think someone like Wasinha was able to so consistently find winning lines as Emu? I've always wondered how far player skill can take you in a game with variance, and it seems like you can go very far.
Yeah, he's trying to figure out how these people are able to find these kind of obscure winning lines with decks like Emu, with Wasinha, but even like everyone playing some obscure deck at any given moment. Honestly, I think it's pure volume of games for the most part. And it's not like just play infinite games and you'll see all the different permutations. A lot of what has to happen is being active in your testing and asking yourself a question like, this is the game I think I'm very likely to lose. What thing have I not tried before that might give me some sort of chance to win? And like, what if that's something foreseeable that might lead or conclude to something that's possibly potentially winning? Let's try to explore that. And sometimes people find some silly lines to win games, and it doesn't look like smart in the moment, but it might just be the 5-6% chance for you to actually win the game. And I think that's something that people need to explore more and more. And I think it's probably something that Wazen in his testing group probably does a lot, because a lot of the games that he's played with Emu, especially on camera, I probably wouldn't take very similar lines, and he's able to kind of convert, which is super awesome from his side.
Yeah, I think most of these types of questions in TCGs where how do you play better effectively, they're just answered by practicing and practicing better. And in Wasin's case, like he's obviously played Emu for OP13, OP14. He has had a lot of experience on the deck. But I'm also sure he doesn't just put in the volume of games, but he, as Jonas said, like makes more use of his practice scenarios, because there can be games in testing, and I see this happen a lot where people just don't test the right way because like the game effectively ends because one guy wins, but it's testing. So you can always, instead of just saying, okay, the game's over, I don't have the counters, you can, okay, pretend this is counter, pretend I counter out, let's see what happens, how the game plays out from this point on, unless it's like a specific like do or die scenario. Because sometimes the games can like happen where they just have no testing value because something random happened, the attack went through that shouldn't have, or maybe like 2 turns ago, you countered with the wrong card, and now it matters, and like just swap out the cards. You're testing, and it doesn't matter who wins the game in testing. It only matters what you learn. And by increasing the quality of your testing and recognizing like all the patterns that can come up and win you games in specific scenarios, you just like increase the width of your knowledge, and you can use that in real tournament games to win the games that matter. So it's just like lots of practice and quality practice.
Yeah, actually, what you guys said reminded me of something that I did a long time ago in the past. There was like an obscure format that we had for just one tournament in Japan for fun when the starter decks came out, like the with Whitebeard, Smoker, the set of 6 starter decks came out, we had this tournament structure, which was just only mirrors. So like you choose your deck, and then you only hit the same deck until there's one person left standing, and that person gets a prize card essentially. And so I didn't get into it, but my brother got into this event, and so we grinded a bunch of Uta mirrors to just try to figure out what was good. And then at the time, we were expecting like, obviously 9 Zoro is a crazy card, and 9 Shanks, but it's like this game I have 9 Zoro. The next game you test like, what if I don't have 9 Zoro on curve? What different line exists if you do that? And then we realized as we played games that actually 9 Zoro was slowing you down significantly, to the point that actually just not having it in your deck was much better, and just playing all in towards 8 Cascade was much better. And so therefore we ended up winning that tournament. But like these sorts of things only exist because from specific points in the games you test like, what happens if you play 9 Shanks on 9 Dong? What happens if you play 8 Kid on 9 Dong? What happens if you play 9 Zoro on 9 Dong? And these sorts of avenues exist because you're actually testing those sorts of lines, but you have to identify that those lines exist to actually test them. So long story short, try different lines, I guess.
So yeah, you basically need to recognize what wins your games and what loses your games. And ideally, you can figure that out as soon as the game is over, or even as the game is going on. Like when you play a turn, or your opponent does something, and you already get that feeling, like either of relief that you pretty much know you're going to win the game, or like a sinking feeling that you're like, okay, now I'm in a really tough spot. I'm not sure how I'm going to call my way out. And that's what testing is for, just figuring out those moments and adapting to them. But even if you cannot do them immediately, you can always VOD review, especially with friends. As many skill players as you can get around yourself, the better. Because again, it just increases the quality of your preparation. And for big tournaments, like, preparation is like, I don't want to give a random number, but a very large percentage of success. Because I don't remember what the exact saying is, but something like, success is when luck meets preparation.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, of course, the thing where you can never, or at least they say, you can never do something for the first time on the stage. You can only bring it to the stage if you've already practiced it. So these are lines that aren't spontaneous things that he thought of on the spot, that he decided like, wait, what if I just did this line? Then maybe I can find wins. He's definitely practiced these lines, which is why he was able to win, and therefore is our current world champion. So I think we wrapped this topic up pretty well. Thank you, Repos, of course, for the question. And next week we'll have one of you guys choosing a question from the comments. So if there is anything that you want to ask us specifically, let us know. And now let's get into the bulk of the conversation, the reason that people are here, the OP16 leaders, which I have in Japanese but not in English, so I'll need you guys to read out for me.
Let's look at the first leader in the color wheel, which is the new ace leader. So we have another 5-life 5k red ace, but this one's not from OP3, it's from OP15. And it has an activate main. Once per turn, up to one of your Monkey D. Luffy characters, or up to one of your characters with a type including Whitebeards with 8k power or more, gains rush during this turn. Just to clarify, I'm pretty sure this is Luffy's that are 8k or more, or Whitebeard pirate cards 8k or more, right?
Yeah,
or is it give rush?
both.
Okay, the 8k or more requires is for both conditions.
Yeah,
okay, just double checking.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a way to just give these random, very obnoxiously large creatures rush. On its face, does this seem something particularly exciting to you guys? For me, there's obviously the new starter deck 30 cards that might be like a little bit helpful. I think there's one 8k body there, but honestly, I'm not sure if big red rush cards kind of competes well against like this ace or this Anel meta that we currently have in OP15. So I'm like pretty like doomer about it, but what are your thoughts on this, Kai?
I think the effect on its own is very good. Like, I mean, just giving anything with 8,000 power or more rush for free is just great value, of course. And then also, importantly, this isn't base 8k, meaning that it's not like you have to play a 6 cost 8,000 to gain rush. You can attach a Dong to a character, for example, and then give it rush, because now it's 8k power. So like, for example, I believe EB01 or maybe EB02 Izo, 5 cost 7,000, which on play gives one of your Whitebeard pirate type leader or characters 1 Dong, can give itself 1 dong to become a 5 cost 8,000 rush character while also having the second effect, which turns your bricks into 2Ks. But I do think, at least looking at some of the cards that exist in this deck, that there do seem to be a lot of bricks. So that could be one of the cards you do have to consider, though it is itself a brick. So I don't hate the effect. There's also some cards that exist that are, or as in one card that very clearly is made to counter NL. So I think that they have considered that. On its own, though, the leader effect in this meta, I'm not sure if it's really enough, as you say,
Yeah, I'm just not excited about another like red rush leader. And it mainly boils down to what I think is the problem in their red design space, where they, like, we already had Sanji from PRB1 and Vivi from EBO3, who just like Grand Rush with different conditions than this, arguably more lenient conditions, because one denies zone plays, one denies zone attacking, but at least you can get the effect online earlier, which is like the type of aggression you actually want unless you're playing a full control deck. But the problem is, rush as a keyword is not good until you actually have control of the board. Like, if you're just turning things sideways, going live, and playing like this kind of kamikaze strategy where your characters just go live, go live, go live, and hope to win that way, that's not very efficient and hasn't really worked since like OP5, with like maybe exception of a format or two. And what makes rush strong is that when you already have control of the board and more characters that you turn sideways than your opponent can answer with their own attacks, and then you add another attack, that's where rush is really good. And nothing inherent in this Ace's design actually contributes to that type of playstyle. You're just like given this threshold of characters you have to play, which are going to be expensive. In many cases, they're going to be like bricks, like counterless cards, because they're AK power or more. And I just see the deck potentially struggling with both consistency and with the ability to just maintain board compared to like pretty much all the other meta options. And like, okay, we'll discuss the other points I have in mind when we get to the characters, because I think they have very restrictive limitations by themselves. But yeah, I'm not too excited for the leader.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the characters a little bit, though, I do think that there's cool characters, but I think really my biggest issue with Red has always been the lack of resources. Like, exactly as you say, when you rest your characters and they just hit into your characters, then it's kind of like the yellow of old, where you just ignore life and you just slowly choke out the resources. And it doesn't seem, at least looking at the characters that Ace has right now, especially with things like that 1-cost Izol from OP03, or maybe it's OP04, I think OP03, oh yeah, OP03, rotating, reduces the consistency as well, not much card draw. So really it just comes down to how broken are the characters that you can play. And, well, 8-cost Newgate seems kind of crazy. Yeah, not bad.
I mean, yeah, let's just naturally segue into that one, because I think it might make sense just to talk about the supplemental cards while we're here. I do think the Newgate is quite powerful. So it's the SR for this deck that's printed. It's an 8-cost 10k, Newgate, obviously. Your turn, your leader gains double attack and plus 2k power. And unfortunately not defensive, but still 7k double attack with leader is nice. And on play, you may reveal 2 character cards with 8k power from your hand, exactly 8k power. Give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 6k power during this turn. But yeah, that card's like a super huge powerhouse. I kind of want to give you the floor, Kai, about what you were saying about the card.
Yeah. So I was thinking, like, wait, are these red-blue ace buffs? But then I realized that it has to be exactly 8k that you reveal. So very intentional design there, which also restricts some of the tech choices, like that 5-cost Izol that we were talking about before, because that's, of course, a 7k. So some things that make the card a little bit awkward. But I do think, just like, if you look at it from like a pure aggro perspective, like a 8-cost dragon, historically 8-cost 9,000 rush that gives one of your leaders or characters 2 rested dong, is a pretty solid, just generic red rush character. And this card feels like that, but with like 3 extra effects, because it kind of gives you 2 dong, because it gives your leader plus 2,000, but it also gives you double attack, and it also gives one of the opponent's characters minus 6,000 power, which is a lot, honestly. So, and then with your leader effect, force gaining rush. So like this card, very good. The double attack kind of incentivizes you to go into leader, but I do think that the on-play effect, reducing power, does let you play a little bit more into that board control-y style. So I do think that if the deck has more board control aspects, then there is some hope for it. I just don't know if they're really going to keep playing into that. Still, this card though I think is really good.
Yeah, I think individually this card like has like a really high power level, but it does like bring up the problems with characters where you have to reveal 8Ks. And those 8Ks are going to be bricks or 1Ks at best, unless they print like a 7 cost 8,000 2K counter, which I think would be really good for the deck, like something of that sort. Because these cards that you're forced to keep in your hand as the game goes on, well, these are going to be known information to your opponent because you're revealing them for cost, and they can abuse that information. So you're already paying the cost in like deck building to just get access to these effects. You need like some payoff to either like filter them out, which to be fair, there's cards like, I don't remember if the Lucky Roo from PRB2 works. Is he generic? He's
just generic, yeah. I think he's generic.
Okay, well, there needs to be like more stuff like that, and then you can actually use some of these stronger effects like the Newgate has, because otherwise, I'm not even sure what you're supposed to do to just like not die to decks which are faster and more aggressive. But this type of effect, which is like control oriented, I really like. And I was even wondering if this could maybe, because of how it's worded, like it gives plus 2K, if it could make like find a use in multicolor decks, which can also run 8K characters, like something like Red Purple Luffy or Red Purple Kid, or maybe even some other color combinations which have cards like Katakuri, 7 cost Kid, and what like Kid even has 2 7 cost Kids which are 8K at this point, and he can also like do double attacks with 3 stands. Like these are a type of decks that can maybe also benefit from this type of card that has both aggressive and controlling aspects. But yeah, this definitely looks like the strongest piece of support so far. It's a super for a reason. Might be a reason to get excited about the Ace deck, but I don't want to judge it prematurely.
Yeah. You talking about them printing or needing to print a 7 cost 8K 2K counter is like really funny. And I think it's probably like the number one thing we have to notice, because the other piece of support that we have so far for the Ace deck is another brick. So any sort of card with counter would be super useful. But let's talk about Vista though, because this is another brick. This is a 6 cost 8K rare. On play, you may reveal one character card with 8K power from your hand, draw a card. So a little bit of card advantage at the very least. And on 1, when attacking, KO up to 2 of your opponent's characters with 2K base power or less. It does make it kind of unfortunate that it's base power, so you can't do any combinations with like some power reduction, which is super frustrating.
I know. And
Additionally,
they printed power
like
reduction with that 8 cost Newgate, so it's a bit awkward, yeah.
Yeah, it's super awkward there. And additionally, like the Dawn 1 requirement is really kind of steep, especially when like with decks relying on a bunch of 1-drops, mainly just Anel. Like this card, unless you play cards like 1 cost Koala to attach a Dawn, makes it really hard to get this effect online until like 7 Dawn, which is when these 1-drops have already like wreaked havoc for multiple turns. So it feels like it's like a half hair too slow to kind of solve the issues of the 1-drops, but a card advantage like threat that also can kind of deal with the small ball stuff, even though it's a bit late, can still might be useful if it ends up still being very popular next set. Mm-hmm. The Anel 1-drops, with the exception of Ohm, right? It's bad in Sanji and bad in Vivi.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really good point. That like these characters need to reveal exactly an 8K power character basically is in a roundabout way leader locking it to the new red ace. And I don't think they necessarily need to do that with just how bad red as a whole is currently. And also, of course, the deck building costs, because the 8 cost Newgate can't reveal itself because it itself is a 10K body. So you are forced to put in these 8K characters on top of that, which also introduces lots of bricks. So I think that like obviously the stat line is really good. The 6 cost 8,000 and draw 1 card on play is like, I mean, if it was like 5 sets ago, maybe even a little bit more than that, then like just that alone would have been like really, really nice, of course. But we don't live in a world anymore where vanilla stat line plus 1 draw is enough to justify having no counter. So then obviously in this deck it has Rush and also it has the anti-NL measure. But I do think that if this deck keeps being, because obviously we don't have all the sport yet, but if they keep printing sport in the way that I think they're going to keep printing sport, in that they'll just keep printing high value, high statted cards, then I think that they're going to end up having lots of counterless issues in the deck. And in that world, would you want to run a card like this? I feel like you'd be forced to make the purple NL matchup better, but then you're making your other matchups worse. And I think that just in general, it's a bit of an awkward card in this meta for me.
Speaking of awkward cards, I think the next card, Jozu, that got spoiled, kind of has an awkward set of stats out for a 7-drop. But it's a 7 cost 8K Whitebeard Pirates. It has blocker. On play, you may reveal 1 character card with 8K power from your hand. Give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 1K power during this turn. So I guess I want to go on a rant about how I just don't like this card. So I feel like when you're printing this card in this ace deck, the usefulness of blocker is like really diminished when you have a rush on. Like, you really want to give this character rush, just because like I think for the most part, like well statted or even like decently statted like blockers gain a lot of their value of just like being played that one turn you play them, because you have to get that free block and then subsequent turns you get to attack with them. When you give your blocker rush, it's like creating this weird tension where you have to figure out whether you want to swing with your AK body or just like have it up as a blocker, and either way you're giving up on a significant amount of value. Additionally, I'm just not a huge fan of this on play with how I expect this ace deck to operate, because for the most part, I think this deck's just going to plan on playing just one big guy a turn and just like punching with a massive 8K body for the most part. And honestly, just minus 1K power is a really powerful effect when you have a very wide board. Like we've seen how cards like Kitten have been like really broken in like a Nell when you have a bunch of like really small units. But when you have one big unit, like minus 1K power, it feels so marginal and not really that useful. So I just feel like a lot of things in this card are just very, very awkward, and I've just not really enjoyed, or like it doesn't seem like it's like particularly powerful or particularly interesting in this kind of deck. All right, rant over. Now you guys can kind of talk about Jozu and you guys' thoughts on it.
To me, this is just pack filler, so I'm happy to pass the mic to whatever everybody wants to talk about.
Okay, so I wanted to go on a similar a list of complaints as you mentioned, because making a body over 5K and putting Rush and Blocker on the same character makes no sense. So I wanted to mention how I was thinking, like, why would Bandai do this? Well, maybe, and this would like be a reasonable buff, or like maybe even make the deck a contender. Maybe they print a card that's like the blue Garp that Kuzan has, where it's like play out 8K 1000. Actually, yeah, that's exactly what Garp says. Play out 8,000 power or less. In this case, Whitebeard Pirates or Luffy character. Maybe they even like make it. I guess it cannot be Garp if it works with Whitebeard Pirates, but that's the only way I could see this type of card making sense, because the stat line is horrendous. Like 7-8 without a counter. It does have a blocker, but again, if he's the only thing coming down, that part makes no sense, because then he's just like minus 1K basically is nothing, and you compare it to like EBO2 Sengoku or something in black, who like revives a full character, is 7-7 blocker, has a counter. Like this is all downsides compared to that. So I was thinking like maybe this is like precursor to reveal of some like really good support that actually makes it viable, because if nothing of the sort exists and nothing is planned in the future to like buff the deck like that, this card is like complete garbage.
All right, I'm glad we're on the
I had my own little mini rant. There we go. That's called bang for your buck.
And now it's my turn to talk about Thatch. I see exactly what you guys mean. Like, I generally like cards that have different avenues of using them are good, because if you obviously you look back in the day at like Bartolomeo, for example, which is a 2K and also a blocker. You can go to some searchers that are a searcher and also a 2K, for example. So like having these different modes are really, really nice on some cards, but some keywords work better together than others. And I think that what would make sense, especially because Thatch being an 8 cost 8,000 with 1,000 counter, and if you have an 8,000 power or higher Whitebeard pirate on the board, this character in your hand is -3 cost and also has blocker. Sorry, I'm translating this on the spot, so it's not going to be perfect to what the English translation is. But both the Thatch and the Jose have blocker while having 8K, meaning that with your Leer effect will have rush. So maybe they have something else in mind to be able to play both offensively and defensively. For example, like an 8 cost Katakuri effect of being able to restand your Whitebeard Pirates type characters at the end of your turn could be able to help with this defensive aspect. But without a card like that, I do think that this is just going to be a punch face a lot with 8K, and if you're hitting a lot with very high numbers, then you're countered very easily by like a 1 cost blocker or something. So don't know if Ace would actually be a threat enough to actually consider those sorts of options, but without any sorts of actual like good removal or good defensive tools, I think this deck is very one note, and that note, at least to me right now, doesn't look great. But once again, I mean, it's Ace, so you know that Bandai is going to print some like absurd secret rare. So we'll see what comes out, you know.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, this guy just feels a lot better because I just checked. He's the same rarity, uncommon, but this is the type of card you can hold for later in the game because he does have a counter, and if you need to, you can play down 2 in a turn when you're at 10 done. So you know one can attack, and one can still remain as a blocker because of discount. In a sense, it's like a smaller 9-cost Shanks from the Shanks starter. So I like this card much more. I think it's just like a more natural inclusion in the deck. Like this might even see play in like all the other Whitebeard Pirates decks, like Ace or even Marco.
Yeah, I do want to be clear. I'm not saying this card's bad. I'm just saying that like the package as a whole is a bit awkward. I think this card's really good.
I'm sad that this fake artificial cycle in my head of cards that cost 3 less when you meet a criteria are just like ruined by this card. Because like Sexka Sanji is broken. I think the Sabo is really, really good. And then we have this guy.
Yeah.
He's
there have been bad cards of this type before. Like, you remember Soba Mask?
Yeah, I was going to mention
Soba Mask is -5 cost, right?
Yeah, that's exactly why I rolled them out. Yeah. I do think that, however, if we talk about every single card that's been revealed, we're going to be here for a very long time. So we should probably move on and just talk about some of the more interesting cards. I do think that, like, to be fair, we all had complaints about Ace, so it's nice to get those out of the way. Shall we move on to the next leader? I believe the only green leader within the set, which is Green-Blue Luffy.
Green-Blue Luffy with an alt art that looks like it's from Hunter x Hunter. Luffy is a 4-life 5k leader in green and blue and has activate main once per turn. If the only characters on your field are Impel Down type characters, set up to 2 of your Dawn cards as active. So we now have I don't know how to describe this. This is kind of like OPO2 Sanji from a long time ago if you only played vanillas. But honestly, we've seen getting 2 extra Dawn be very, very broken. See GP Luffy from a couple sets back. So if the power level with a leader that's Impel Down is there, I can see this being very powerful. I am concerned about like the how fragile being a 4-life 5k leader can be, but it really just depends on how broken the Impel Down cards are. Hrvoje, you have any thoughts on the leader effect? Oh, yeah, Kai.
Oh, I have a lot. So yeah, the restriction on this card is most similar to the one on Green Purple Luffy, but we did see like this exact effect on Smoker, like Red Green Smoker, and as you said, the Blue Green Sanji. Except like those were less restrictive, the Smoker and the Sanji. I mean, because this effectively enacts the same limitation as the Green Purple Luffy, where the actual characters you play on board, which is like the most important thing your deck can do, are now limited to this very unpopular archetype, which is very odd given that you're playing a Straw Hat leader. And this isn't like a color combo that had a lot of leaders before, so it's just so surprising to me that they decided to limit it so much, especially when one of the currently best generic blue cards, like ran in pretty much every deck that contains blue, is Cavendish. And this deck cannot use it. Like Cavendish was like pretty much the all-star of Green Blue Zoro Sanji, which was like I would say the best leader in that color combination before. And if you use it in this deck, you're playing without the leader ability. So it just makes no sense to me that was excluded, and it's pretty much going to be impossible to judge this leader without seeing what type of support it gets. Because at minimum, I think it needs some equivalent of Sanji Pudding or 5-cost Smoker, which is like 5-7 or 6-8 stat line with like a really good effect that further enables this type of swarm strategy. Otherwise, I have no idea how this leader is going to compete with effectively just one set of support, because all the Impel Down stuff that was blue rotated out. So
the 1-cost Buggy rotating out, you have like, don't know if it would be used, but the Ivankov Luffy combo rotating out as well. And I do think that this deck needs resources and it needs ways to expand your board. So like, I mean, if something like the 8-cost Moria, for example, existed for this deck, I think that'd be nice. You know, like 8-cost 9,000 to play a 4 and a 2 from your trash would give this deck a lot more gas, I think. But the main thing for me, especially when you look at those decks like Red Green Smoker, GP Luffy I think is an exception because most of their cards are card neutral. But the unsuccessful version of this kind of leader effect, Red Green Smoker has been kind of good, but I do think that's it was much better in Japan, and when it was good in Japan, it was more of an 8-cost kid deck, so I don't necessarily think that was Bandai's intention. I do think that they wanted to be more of an aggressive red-green deck. But then the green-blue Zoro Sanji, or not Zoro Sanji, the green-blue Sanji from OP03 all have similar sorts of effects that haven't really been successful because basically you dump your hand because you have a bunch of extra dong, but you have no cards left in your hand, and the cards you got onto the board, well, you got them onto the board quickly. They're just very small. They're not as eventful as you want them to be, and therefore you end up burning out a little bit too fast. So the leader effect on its own never really excited me. Also, the restriction to Impel Down, as Hrvoje said, is very rough in my opinion, especially since we have to use cards from this set. But, I mean, green and blue support means that we will have quite a few cards to choose from. Interestingly, though, I think we'll see this more as we talk about some of the cards, but I am more excited for green-blue Zoro Sanji using some of these Impel Down cards, just because it's dual support in both the colors that Zoro Sanji can use, and it seems like some of them could be pretty solid within that.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the SR for this deck that I think is quite powerful. Not as powerful as Sanji Pudding, but I still think is quite potent, which is the new Emporio Ivankov. It is a 4-cost 4K. It's Impel Down, thankfully. It has 1K counter. On play, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Reveal up to one Impel Down type card and add it to your hand, and the rest on the bottom. Then play up to one character card with a cost of 2 or less from your hand. So you get a free search, and sometimes you just get a free card, which is super nice. So it's kind of like Portion that way. And you get to play any character card at the cost of 2 or less. So it's not restricted to Impel Down. This is probably, I imagine, what Kai is implying in terms of Zoro Sanji support. I think this card is quite good. It is a bit understated, so if your deck can't really capitalize on using these 4K bodies, or if it's a matchup where a 4K body is kind of useless, it can feel kind of frustrating. But I do think this card is quite powerful. Kai, is this the main card that you kind of want to try out in Zoro Sanji, or is there other cards you also want to mess around with? Because I think there's another one we'll talk about shortly.
Yeah, no, I'm waiting until you can get to the 2-cost Mr. 2 Bone Clay, because that card is actually quite a nice buff. But this card is, especially, you made the Porsche comparison, but when compared to, I don't know if it's Porsche or Porsche, in Japanese it's Porsche, when compared to that card, it feels a little bit sad because Porsche is a vanilla stat line 3-cost that plays a 4K or less, which a lot of the time entails a 3-cost. And this character being a 4-cost 4,000 that only searches 3 and also can only play a 2-cost or less can feel pretty bad, which also this card being an SR to me has me very worried about the overall power level of the deck. But I do think that it's really going to be like, if this deck has enough good 2-costs, if it has other things like the 5-cost, 6-cost general stat line, that would actually make this deck and the Impel Down package as a whole good, then I think that a card like this could work. But I do think this is very supplementary, and we haven't really seen, at least I hope that we haven't seen the sort of like bulk of the support for this deck quite yet.
Yeah, I think just the way this card works, like the stat line is a joke, and that's a recurring thing, like a recurring theme for most of these Impel Down green cards. It just doesn't have a good stat line. It does have a very nice effect, but then again, I'm not sure if this is the way you will be generating advantage even with the Impel Down engine, because the old Ivankov, the blue one, is 3 cost, and he's gonna be straight up drawing your card and potentially getting the 2 cost title if you can set it up. So yeah, this is more reliable in playing out the extra body, but unless those 2 cost bodies are actually worthwhile, I'm not even sure this like is going to significantly improve the deck, because ultimately, do you actually benefit from playing a 2 cost body for free? I'm not sure, because your leader just gives you 2 down back. If you have this extra 2 cost in hand, you can just play it, right? So, do you want to play like 2 cost and then 2 cost on like 4 cost, 2 cost, 2 cost on curve? It doesn't sound that insanely appealing to me. I think you just want to go for like most stat efficient plays and push card advantage. But again, without seeing the rest of the support, this type of stuff is very difficult to judge accurately.
It seems like a lot of the deck support is going to hinge on just how good those 2 costs are, which is why if we do want to sort of pivot to the card that I was talking about a little bit before, the 2 cost Bunkley gives me a little bit of hope, because it's a 2 cost 1000 power character with no counter, to be fair though, that on play draws 1 card, and then on attack with 1 long attached, this character's base power is equal to the opponent's current power. So this, I think, does solve some of the grievances that I have, where it's just in a sense, like minimum 2 cost 5000 power character, which also is card neutral the turn that it's played. So I think it's the sort of thing that this deck would need to actually have it like function as a whole. But I do think that you need multiple things like this to actually have this like 2 cost play style actually work out. But how do you feel about this Mr. 2 and the direction of the deck, maybe, Jonas?
So this is by far the best 2-drop that they've printed for Impel Down so far. I mean, there's like another 2-drop vanilla blocker and another one that's basically just 2 cost Rosie blocker. But this is like the best one they've had so far. But at the same time, this is a 2 cost that says on play draw a card and next turn swing for 6 and then dies. I mean, 6 is kind of arbitrary because it's going to be like 1 more, maybe 2 more than your opponent's leader. And then very easily die because it's just going to be a 1k on defense. And I'm not sure if that's good enough in the current meta, just because of how fragile it is. And now we've already talked about how mediocre the stat line is for Ivankov. Now we just have another guy that's pathetically small on defense that we just like will never be able to stick on board. So I don't think this remedies the situation at all. If this was like somehow able to kind of be the same size on offense and defense, I'd be much happier. And this might be like a reasonable contender. But this kind of like further compounds the issue. And all it really does is allow you to swing 6 on like a later turn in the game, which is super nice. And that's about it.
I think the design of the card itself is fine, just because the idea is to use those 2 Dawn that you free up on something. And, you know, slotting in a guy that's just going to be a 6k swing and disappear is kind of fine. It's like a way weaker version of what Purple NL does with his 1 cost, where, you know, you play this 1 cost and then he becomes a 6k swing somewhere down the line. Like, you don't know when. Like, but at some point he's going to apply pressure, and that's going to be the value, and this also immediately replaces itself in hand. But yeah, as you said, the downside is there's no counter, and the deck could be a lot better at abusing these types of cards if it could run, for example, the 6 cost Law, who is not the Impel Down type, because then you would be able to salvage this, replay it later, and the only way you can do that right now is, as Kai mentioned, using this in Zoro Sanji, where 2 cost is like the ideal bounce back target. Like, if this existed in OP12, we would have been very happy.
The demerit of it being rested and just dying the next turn is solved a bit if you're playing Zoro Sanji. In this deck, it does just disappear. You guys keep disappointing me with these comparisons, whether it's the 4 cost Ivankov compared to the Poruche, or the 2 cost Bunkley compared to any of the 3,000 1 costs that NL runs. Like, like a low roll for NL would be Poruche into, like, I don't know, Ohm or something, but then like a high roll for this deck feels like it would be Ivankov into Bunkley, which both cards feel worse than those two cards.
I
that
would
we
not
just
call
talked about.
Porche into dog a low roll.
I said Ohm. I just mean like a generic one cost, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not even sure Porsche into Ohm is like worse than that.
Yeah, I think that was Kai's point. Yeah, you go Porch
Yeah.
into Ohm, and you were still probably more happy than with this.
This card being a 2 cost with the on play effect and the on attack effect like barely turns into any of NL's 1 costs, which makes me a little bit more depressed looking at it now. But
Yeah,
it's
I think
the
this
best
is first and foremost
2-drop that he
Buggy
has.
support, but we'll get to
Yeah,
that.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
There aren't too many green Impel Down cards that have been shown. Mainly that Yonkov is the one that I believe is the most worth talking about. So we can probably just jump into Buggy, I think.
Yeah, let's talk about the interesting deck building one. So we have a new 5 life 5k Buggy leader in blue. This one just has Dawn X1 once per turn. This effect can be activated whenever your Impel Down type character card is removed from the field. Play up to 1 Prisoner of Impel Down card from your hand. So this is removed from the field by combat, by effects, or anything, and you get to play 1 Prisoner of Impel Down card from your hand. We haven't had one yet, so let's briefly talk about what in the world is a Prisoner of Impel Down. It's nothing too fancy. It's just a 6 cost 6k body that's 2k counter. And it has my most fun deck building restrictions in the card. Under the rules of this game, you may have any number of this card in your deck. So we have a new Pacifista. But instead of a 4 cost 6k vanilla, we have a 6 cost 6k with 2k counter. I just don't know how this deck's going to play out, to be completely honest. With this leader effect, are you guys super excited for this? Do you guys think this is kind of more like a gimmicky, play a bunch of 6Ks on its face? Do you just need more support to figure out whether this is good or not? What are your guys' thoughts? Start with you, Kai.
So I think the obvious counterplay to this deck would be the counterplay similar to like Yellow Luffy, for example, where you just kind of ignore the characters, you just hit life or something, which, you know, isn't always correct, but like, you know what I mean. And Buggy, though, has the sort of benefit, I guess, of being able to remove his own characters, because his leader effect specifies that it doesn't have to be the opponent's effects and also doesn't have to be on the opponent's turn. So if you remove your own characters on your own turn, then you can get whatever the other effect is, plus being able to play one of these Prisoners of Impel Down. So I think that it's very interesting in what it's able to do. I do think it's like probably meant to be more of like a goofy deck where you just like, wait a minute, it's all Prisoners of Impel Down, which I'm also very happy. The first treasure rare that we have in Japan, for some reason they decided to print those now, but it is going to be the Prisoner of Impel Down, which means if you want to do max rarity this deck, you need to buy like 12 of this alt art, which is a lot of fun. But I do think that the cards that either remove themselves or bounce some of your other characters, especially in blue, generically, or within this deck printed in this set, can be a pretty solid support for this deck. I don't know if it's actually going to be enough, but I do think it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we move into that, Hrvoje, thoughts on the leader?
So honestly, I am quite positive about this. Like, obviously, we'll need to see more support to see how far this leader can go. But there's two things that come with the whole Prisoners Impel Down things, and it's pretty much all of your 2Ks in the deck are going to be playable cards. And best of all, it's going to be a 6k body played for free. That naturally, because you're expecting to play them, you'll have to run a more than usual number of 2Ks probably, just so you have the freedom to keep playing them down. And then, as you like hinted at, there's so many blue synergies where you can just manipulate your own characters, even when your opponent doesn't attack into them. Like on your own turn, you can Jozo something of your own, bounce opponent's character, and play down a 6k body. If you think about what deck did that in the past, like remove opponent's body and play a 6k, well, Red Purple used to do that a lot, and that was like a very, very, like, the leader's banned for a reason, right? But then there's also stuff like, if your opponent decides to ignore your board, you can do stuff like Slave Arrow on opponent's turn, bounce one of your own things back, play down prisoners, and just keep expanding your board on both turns, because the effect works on both turns. And the only downside that I can see at the moment is that you're kind of forced to play off curve in a similar manner to Red Purple Roger, because every turn you want to play out these characters these prisoners of Impel Down, you have to have a Dawn attached, which means your curve suffers, unless there are easy ways to attach Dawn as you play your characters. Like maybe that effect will be included on more of the support cards. So yeah, at that point, the only potential problem I can see if you're successful at swarming is how easily can the deck be starved of resources, because you are going to have a finite number of prisoners in your deck. You're going to draw a finite number, and after all, you might just run out of characters. And this is where I expect the blue color, like the nature of the blue color, to cover the weakness, where you just have some, like a various number of draw effects which you can repeatedly abuse. And yeah, if that works, I am optimistic about the deck, because I think this can be really strong just from the speed of the swarm that it's going to have access to.
Yeah, I do think actually this deck's probably going to be, assuming, I don't know if exactly if we're going to get a Searcher, for example, but if we just look at the cards that exist right now, in the extra regulation, this deck is a lot nicer, I would think, because you can run the 1-cost Buggy Searcher to find Impel Down characters. I think it was Buggy, I'm pretty sure. To find Impel Down characters, and then you play down the Jozu to bounce back the 1-cost Buggy, and then to bounce one of the opponent's characters while also establishing one of the prisoners of Impel Down. I think like that sort of synergy would be really nice. So I think that if this deck can find a Searcher, then it would be in a pretty good spot. Otherwise, right now we're relegated to budget purple NL 1-cost in Mr. 2. So there's not the worst, obviously, because you can bounce it back similar to Zorosanji. But this Mr. 2, as well as your leader, both requiring one Dong to get their effects off, does mean that you're going to have to play off curve, which may be compensated by the fact that you get a free 6k body onto the board, but we're going to just have to see what's going to end up happening. I do think, though, that one of the cards, maybe not entirely, but does help with the resource issue, and a pretty interesting card in the 4-cost 5,000 Mr. 3 Giardino, which I'll try translating for you guys. But 4-cost 5,000 plus 1,000 counter, activate main. You can put this character in your trash, draw 2 cards, and then one of the opponent's characters with a cost of 9 or less will not be able to attack on the opponent's until the opponent's next end phase. So removes itself, therefore activating your leader effect, draws you 2 cards, and also stops an attack. So it does a whole lot of things that work pretty well in favor of Blue Buggy. What do you think about this card, Yonas?
Yeah, it just feels very... This card, I think, is quite good and does help this deck, both with the resource issue and also just help stabilize against your opponent just kind of running you over, especially with like big guys like 7-cost Zoro or anything else that can like make their leader a little bit bigger and kind of invalidate these 6k bodies. But because this gets to slow down a lot of their aggro. I just don't know why this is in blue. This just feels like a black Croc card or maybe just like a green card. So it's kind of like not really like that. But yeah, this card is just quite good. So I'm like really excited about it. And if they have more of the supplemental, like stall your opponent's deck out and like really slow them out, I think this plus another tool like it can really make this deck shine.
I think just the reach of the card on defense is quite like a lot higher than I would expect. And yeah, this is one of those cards that can potentially make the difference, because like attacking for playing out the body after attacking is like always going to be good value, even though you're effectively just side grading a body because you're not actually producing, like he removes himself from the board basically. But the fact that it's another way for you to do the leader effect without any interaction from your opponent, I think is a very good sign for the leader. Like you can just fire it off on demand, like BlackRock would with Bonclay, where he just immediately sacks it for one of the 5 costs. So yeah, I just think this is the type of support. It makes sense that the card is super rare, and I hope there's more pieces of support like this, where not as much is needed from your opponent to help you actually achieve your desired goals, because that can be a weakness in One Piece design, because it has been in the past. Like red purple sugar, if your opponent doesn't attack you at key moments, like your deck is kind of flopping around doing nothing. So if Buggy can avoid that issue primarily, once again, I'm very hopeful about the future of the deck.
There was one card I also wanted to talk about with this Buggy deck that I thought was like pretty powerful, but I don't want to spend too much time on uncommons, but it's the new Croc.
Yeah, it's okay. I want to talk about this card too. I think it's a pretty solid card. 100%. Like, does a whole lot for the deck, and also can help out with Zorosanji. Again, 4-hour Zorosanji Copers in the chat.
We love to see it. But yeah, this is a 4-cost 6k blocker that's impel down for the new Luffy enjoyers. It is a brick, unfortunately. But yeah, 4-cost 6k blocker. With on play, you may return one of your characters with a cost of 2 or more to its owner's hand. You may play up to 1 impel down type character card with a cost of 2 or less from your hand. So if your deck is mostly impel down core, you can, at the very worst, on your 5-down turn, like bounce a 2 or 3 that you played, or a 2-drop you played on the 3-down turn, replay it, and then get to also play a 6-cost prisoner, while also developing a 6k blocker. So it feels like it's like really powerful. It's obviously slower than like Jinbei Weevil or whatever. This is also, it's not a super, it's just not a 7 Warlord. That's unfortunate. But I think this card's just quite good and helps this deck go a lot wider than it normally would be otherwise be able to. So I'm hoping this card gets a little bit more support, because right now bouncing Bond Clay is like the best use of this guy. But I'm trying to find other ways to use him, because this is a very, very, very strong effect for this deck.
I think that's a sufficiently good use. Like 4/6 blocker, that line used to cause a lot more fear, or like that stat line used to cause a lot more fear than it does today, because of all the tools you have to deal with, like these medium-sized bodies. But that's still a very respectable line that could like guarantee a free block when played on curve. And yeah, just the fact that it can reset Bonkley, like that's more than it needs to do, because it's also going to proc the leader effect along the way. So yeah, good piece of support. And again, I think moving in the right direction to make a proper good Buggy leader.
Yeah, for sure. I do think, although the 4-cost 6,000 stat line kind of feels like it's been mediocre because things like Lightning Dragon exist that can permanently stun it, the 4-cost 6,000 blocker is pretty nice to have, just because being a 6,000 power blocker keeps you out of Mamaragang range. So I do think that there is some merit to this stat line. But yeah, I think the on-play effect, we mentioned the Mr. 2, and I think that that's going to be at least the only thing that we can really talk about in regards to 2 costs, because the others aren't really of much note. But also because you can bounce back a 2 cost or higher, you can also, for example, if you don't have a Prisoner of Impel Down in your hand, you bounce back the Prisoner of Impel Down that you just attacked with, so therefore is rested, bounce it back to your hand. With your leader effect, it comes back active, so in a way, reactivating your board. And then you also have the benefit of being able to play out a 2 cost, whether it's the Bonkley or hopefully a Searcher. So I think that there's some interesting ways you can make this work. Just being able to proc your leader effect, I think, is very nice. And so I'm rather optimistic about this card. I also really like the art. So I think that Buggy, I'm actually surprised. I thought I had a bit of a hot take in thinking that Buggy seemed kind of cool. But it seems like we're all kind of on the similar wavelength so far on this podcast.
Yeah. I'm always down for a good Buggy deck, but hopefully it ends up being more powerful than the previous one. All right. Let's kind of keep rapid firing through these, because I know Hrvoje's got to leave relatively soon. And the leader that most people are excited about is the next one, which is the new upcoming Purple Sengoku leader. So we have a purple leader 5-life 5k. Activate main, you may return 8 of your active Dawn cards to your Dawn deck. Play up to 3 Admiral type character cards with different card names from your hand. So before we kind of talk about the leader, let's talk about the 3 admirals that we have that in this current set. The first one is Kuzan. Kuzan is a 7-cost 8k on play, ramp 2 rested Dawn. Once per turn, Dawn -1. Up to one of your opponent's characters can't activate blocker this turn. So of the 8 Dawn that you lost, you get 2 back. The second one is Sakazuki, another 7-cost 8k body. This one says, on play, Dawn -1. Give up to one of your opponent's characters -6k power until the end of your opponent's next end phase. And activate main once per turn. You may rest one of your Dawn cards. If your leader is the Navy type, add 2 Dawn back. So if you have 1 active Dawn during that time, you get 2 rested Dawn, or 2 active Dawn.
2 active Dawn, yeah.
Yeah. And the last one's Borsalino to kind of clean up this circle of admirals. On play, add 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck instead it is active, and then add an additional 1 and rest it. So we get that 1 active Dawn, which is going to be critical for that Sakazuki we just mentioned. And then end of your turn, Dawn -2, restand Borsalino Sin is active, and then this character gains blocker until your opponent's next end phase. So just kind of as a recap, all in all, when you play this Dawn -8 combo and play all three of these guys, you're going to get 2 Dawn back from Kuzan. You're going to get, is it 1 or 2 Dawn back from Bors? 2 back from each, right? And then you have to Dawn -1 for the Sakazuki. So you're effectively like Dawn minus, you get 5 of it back immediately. And you're going to get an 8. Oh, yeah, minus for the power, yeah. Thank you, yeah. And you get to -6k a body for the turn cycle, and you're going to get an 8k, you're going to get a blocker if you Dawn -2 more back. How does this Emu-esque combo feel for you guys? I'm honestly, I was very excited when this came out, mostly because I was waiting for the ban list when we got the announcement for it. But now that I have thought about it a little bit more, I'm kind of pretty lukewarm on this combination of cards. Mostly just because I just feel like compared to Emu and what that deck does, like 3 AK bodies, despite this power, doesn't feel like it's good or nearly as powerful. And it feels like this combo is a little bit slow. I mean, we don't have the full set, obviously, but getting to 8 active Dawn isn't the easiest. Like, you're just gonna get there on like turn 3 at best, or your 4 Dawn, or turn 4 on the play at best, and that's just gonna happen naturally. Unless you have like a double ramp, like trigger out of life scenario, which is gonna be a little bit rare. So I'm not super excited about this combo. Maybe this is better than I end up giving it credit, but I've kind of cooled down on this when I thought that this was going to be one of the most sick combos in OP16. Hrvoje, what are your thoughts on Sengoku and the 3 admirals are going to be playing in the deck?
A very similar sentiment. When this was first revealed, I was like, whoa, this is the ultimate buster call. Like, you just summon down like the navy and ruin your opponent. But yeah, I kind of got lost the hype, because the thing Bandai is doing with this set is like they seem to be doing a lot of like those swarm type effects, packing them onto the leader, is like giving just more immediate benefit to the characters as soon as they're played, or playing out more characters. And this is effectively Reiju, but skipping the judge step because it's on the leader. Because effectively it ends up being the same thing. On turn 4, ideally, you resolve the combo. Of course, going first, you would need to ramp to do it on turn 4, but I'm sure this deck will run sufficient ramp cards like Bonclay or maybe even actually no, Zorjuro in a 5-life deck doesn't make sense. It's going to be Bonclay or something else. And the payoff is like 3 really big, really annoying guys. But when you think about it, if you're playing against Purple NL, by the time you do this, they will already have 2 6-cost NLs on the board, which are bigger bodies, not necessarily more relevant effects, because I think Sakazuki in particular is the one with the strongest effect. And what I think this deck is going to be lacking the most is consistency in pulling off this combo perfectly. And maybe it won't even lack the consistency. They already revealed 2 searchers, and there might be more to come, or maybe some draw power. But given the garb they revealed today, he doesn't have the Admiral typing, which is, to me, very odd. But if they're not going to do any additional Admirals, and you just have to play these 3 down every time, I don't necessarily see this play taking over the meta in the way that Emu did with the 5 Elders. Because, yeah, these are really big characters, but they're also 7 costs, which makes them vulnerable to like all the green freeze effects and stuff. I also want to say we're just going to be sacrificing hand size, because Emu gets the freedom that everything gets to come out from trash, and Reiju had that same freedom when playing Judge. You play Judge, discard 2, bring back everything from trash, Reiju draws you the cards you just spend back up, and you effectively paid nothing. But this is like you're tossing 3 cards from your hand, and this investment onto the board really needs to pay off. And maybe, I don't know if the power creep is that insane that I'm just thinking that maybe 3 AK bodies by themselves are not enough. I think we'll have to wait and see, especially how the curve is designed leading up to these characters and after resolving this combo once. Because in theory, you can resolve this twice to fill up the full board, but whether that's going to be worth it and whether you're going to be running pieces like Black Maria to enable this, that remains to be seen with more support directly tied to this power play. Yeah, you can take over, Kai.
Yeah, I unfortunately had a similar sort of thing. The first time that I saw the leader as well as the characters, I was like, it's blue purple Luffy and black Emu combined. That's crazy. But then you read like I don't know why. I feel like I read the cards multiple times but kept forgetting what the cards do. So I keep getting like re-hyped for them, where I think about playing 3 8Ks onto the board and I'm like, wait, that sounds crazy. And then I read what the cards do. And like in actuality, the cards don't do all too much. Like Kuzang has a sort of conditional effect. It makes so that one of the opponent's blockers doesn't activate, which isn't always going to come up. But it is kind of like a for the whole turn sort of thing. So it is nice when it does happen. But for the most part, this is just going to be a 7 cost 8,000, which re-ramps some of your Dong after you use your leader effect. So effectively just means that instead of a -8, it's a -6. And you're just mainly paying for the stat line. Borsellino, similar sort of thing, but a lot more usable because he also gets the ramp, but he becomes a blocker at the end of the turn, having a very 8 cost Katakuri type effect. And I think that that's quite nice within the deck. But when you compare it to a deck like Blue Purple Luffy and Black Emu, it functions in a different way, and I'll talk about that a little bit after. The one card that I do think is very, very nice and also is generic, at least the first part of the effect. So something that maybe some other decks may consider. I don't know exactly which one yet, but just very solid effect. Sakazuki, the on-play effect being able to reduce an opponent's characters by 6,000 power until the opponent's next end phase. Very, very solid in my opinion. Just being able to play down a pretty well-statted character and also at the bare minimum being able to deny one of the opponent's attacks for a turn, I think is just, in general, pretty good. But the thing is that if you're de-ramping yourself by 8, meaning that you can't consistently do this twice in a row, you're also having to play these characters out of hand, meaning that you need to have them in hand. And the payoff just didn't seem that crazy. Like, I feel like the deck needs something a little bit more. It needs like a blocker that draws 1 on KO, or it needs like a Blue Purple Luffy type leader effect. It needs some way to actually accrue resources for this combo to actually be worth it. And right now it feels like the payoff just isn't worth the cost.
I'm going to manifest there being just some 5 Elders-esque Sengoku that's 10 drop that's going to help facilitate this and make it a little more powerful.
But
that's
the issue there...
go ahead.
The issue with the Sengoku 10 drop is that your leader effect is already de-ramping you. You probably want to use it as fast as possible to get these characters, which means that you have to re-ramp back to 10 to get to that point. And then so, like, for example, the 10 cost Doflamingo in Doflamingo, it's hard to do this multiple times in a row, and also because it has to come out of your hand. Lots of awkward things. So I think even if we get another, like, boss monster character, it feels a bit awkward with the way that the deck at least seemingly seems like it wants to play out the game.
Well, there's going to be multiple issues, and we're probably underestimating it. To be fair, because let's be real, a leader dropping 3 8K bodies in a turn, it has to be like at least respectable. If it's not, then I don't know what the game is doing. But it is going to face this dichotomy of carefully choosing which types of support cards to run, because you will want to ramp, but you will also want to have like useful effects in the mid game. Because you could play like something like Sanji Pudding to like help you gain back some of the Dawn as you use leader, but then you are sacrificing you're sacrificing your speed, because by playing Sanji Pudding you are not ramping, for example. So he might even like reach towards some of the Roger support in OP13. I don't remember how many or if any of it is leader locked, or if it just asks you to have a Dawn attached to your leader. But if they're generic, like maybe I should just check before continuing this. But if they're generic and you can just ramp with them, I could see them working. But also what you mentioned, I actually think both Kuzan and Sakazuki could be decently generic depending on the leader, because I'm now again getting ideas for Red Purple Luffy. Like these are 8K stat line guys. They combine with some of the YB Pirate support in this set. You could maybe run something of the sort in Red Purple Luffy. Because you drop 7 cost Kuzan, you ramp 2, your leader ramps you to 10, and then you already have the freedom to use Gum Gum Giant and whatnot. Like I can see the type of acceleration maybe also being relevant in the meta. I'm now checking the Roger support.
I think it's almost all Given Dawn exclusive. Like nothing leader locked.
As a Red Purple Luffy coper, I have extensively looked at the ramp cards that exist, because Red Purple Luffy notoriously does not have very good ramp. And unfortunately, at least from my experience, the Roger ramping cards, the good ones like Bullet, the 3-cost Bullet, are leader locked, whereas the kind of like ones are like the 5-cost Oden are generic if you have a Dong attached. But yeah, I think it was like
Gaban is too
2-cost
expensive.
Buggy.
I just checked.
Yeah, the 3-cost, and also I think Gaban's also leader locked as well. So like, there's yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of the better cards in that deck are leader locked. But yeah, I wasn't actually going to mention it because I did think this was just a me cope. But Red Purple Luffy does use these cards quite well.
I promise you're not going to be the only person ever coping RP Luffy at any given moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a super fun deck, and especially with this Kuzan Borsalino being able to immediately use your leader effect and then use the effect from that Kuzan Borsalino could be quite nice. So there's definitely some things you can do. I'm sure that this deck isn't going to be bad, but I do think that it definitely needs the consistency and it needs the actual like means of dealing with aggro, because I think I think we're all looking this through a NL lens, but we have to because of how powerful that deck is. And if you can't deal with NL, then you need to be beating everything else in the meta if you want to be actually considered in the meta. So it's kind of a more polarizing view on these cards just due to the fact that we have to consider this overwhelmingly powerful deck as a starting point.
Yeah, but I also think, again, it's not just NL. Anything that runs Luna or Carrot can also potentially cause problems for the deck, unless they actually gain some sort of reliable removal suite. But yeah, I think that's about it for L and purple cards. There's 2 more searchers, and I think that is it. Like, one is 1k classic top 5, and the other is 2k also top 5, but you discard the card.
Yeah,
So
but,
I'm not sure if those are worth much.
They'll help get the combo going, but I'm not entirely sure if they make or break the deck at this point. But yeah, let's kind of rapid fire through the last 2 leaders. Thankfully, the new Yamato is not going to be much of a conversation about. The Yamato is a mono black 5k leader, Land of Wano. Whenever a Land of Wano type character card is played from your trash, that character gains rush during this turn. The reason why I said there's not much to talk about is I don't think there was any black Wano cards before this set.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Before this set, and now there's like 3. And the main one that I thought was like reasonable was the new 8-cost Yamato. Let me find that card.
Actually, there was the double attack that Moria used to run. Is he Land of Wano?
The Ryuma?
The 4-cost 6 Ryuma? He might be actually Wano. I stand corrected.
He probably is, because I think that they made that for Perona.
But yeah, there's a new Yamato. It's an 8-cost 8k that's a 1k counter. It has unblockable, and it has on KO play up to 1 6-cost or lower Yamato from your trash. But there haven't been many clear ways to be able to play cards from your trash, so I think we're just waiting for that. I assume SR 6-cost Yamato to get spoiled so we can kind of figure out how this engine works.
Yeah, basically Bandai is doing this thing with Black where every set they just design like a complete new engine, and they're trying stuff out and just completely disassociating from what the overpowered color identity used to be. I understand them, but then again it makes it really difficult to actually build innovative decks with the stuff that comes out, because there's like pretty much no relevant existing support for the deck, and even the old stuff that revives, Moria is banned, and Rebecca plays out a character rested, so those 2 are immediately out as options to give something rush. We just need to see what comes out for the leader.
Yeah, I do think that this leader is has the most question marks currently, but we can kind of speculate a little bit about what it may be able to do, because like this Yamato that has the on KO effect that plays out a 6-cost Yamato, there's also the Ace, which is a 4-cost 5000, which on KO forces the opponent to trash 2 cards, and also has the activate main to attach a Rested Dong to your leader or character, essentially. And both of these characters having very powerful on KO effects makes me think that you're going to have a lot of characters that KO your own characters, so that therefore you could get these on KO effects off. And so in the case of Yamato, you KO your own, you KO your Yamato, then you play out a new 6-cost Yamato, and then with your leader effect that gains rush. So we'll see how these interact. I do think there's going to be something interesting here. One effect that we haven't seen before, but I think I was theory crafting what could make this deck interesting is if you had, for example, an effect that reduces the cost of characters in your trash. So for example, then this Yamato would be able to summon itself. Because I think that like this card having unblockable, I think that's the name of the keyword in English, implies that you want to give it rush, so you get that immediate 8 cost, or you get that 8k unblockable rush effect, which makes me think that this card's going to be played out of trash. And also the fact that the on-KO effect just says any Yamato makes you think that maybe we might have some sort of card that reduces the cost of cards within your trash, which I do think could make the deck a little bit more interesting if we get more effects like this. But again, super speculative. We need to sort of see what's going to end up happening. I think there's potential, though, just because summoning out of trash doesn't reduce your hand size. So more optimistic about this rush effect compared to aces just by virtue of being black.
I think it will just be some type of like Yamato downgrading from her. I'm not sure if it's just Devil Fruit or Sulong. I don't remember Yamato lore that well. Yeah, actually, I have one gripe about the support so far, the Nami Searcher. I don't know why the Nami is locked into Land of Wano leaders, which don't exist in black otherwise. And Perona, the only deck that really used the Wano engine, I guess from Mihawk, she lost the Momo Searcher, so now she's just stuck with the Otama Searcher that is locked to green cards only. And she just doesn't have Wano support, and then they print this Nami and lock her to Wano leader, so she cannot work with the only leader that could use her. So, yeah, I don't know. What the hell, Bandai? Also,
they don't like you. They don't
maybe,
like the Wano Perona deck.
Yeah, maybe this gives us another opportunity to call Odin a bum if they print a bad enough card. So that's my thoughts on the leader so far.
I made a whole tweet about this as well when they showed the Nami. I was so disappointed that this couldn't be used in Perona, because it's like actually the perfect card for Perona. It fills up your trash for the 8 cost event, or is like 1 cost rest 7 Dong and have a Moria type effect. It could fill up your trash with some Thriller Bark stuff while also looking for your main Wano engine. You'll be able to replace the 1 cost Momonosuke, which is rotating out, and just all around great card. Just being a 1 cost that can also be rested with You Can Be My Samurai would have been perfect for green black Perona. But I think that deck's a little bit too strong in their eyes, so they decided not to give it any buffs this time around.
All right, let's jump into the last leader. Yeah, let's.
Probably the most anticipated one based on the talk I've seen online.
Yeah, I think this might be the leader that has the highest ceiling in terms of being the most gross. But it's the new black-yellow Teach, because apparently Teach needed another color. We have a 5k 4-life leader in black and yellow. Opponent's turn, all your characters get +1 cost. And on your opponent's attack, once per turn, you may trash 1 card with trigger from your hand. Change the target of that attack to this leader or one of your Blackbeard type character cards. So we now have Purple Dofi effect on with Blackbeard core, basically. There is a lot of weird deck building restrictions with like trashing cards with trigger, and I'm not entirely sure where this +1 cost comes in, but all the things going on in this leader or these cards seem kind of terrifying, and I'm not entirely sure if this is good, but I think people kind of in general underestimate how much extra value you get with redirecting a swing at a character, where a lot of times you're netting at least 1 card of value. So this is kind of negated, but the cost of the additional card is kind of negated. The question is whether you have enough trigger cards to kind of use this reliably. And the old Blackbeard core didn't have too many, but there are plenty of new tools that we'll have that might end us making this good. What are your guys' thoughts? Start with you, Hrvoje.
So yeah, it's another play on the Purple Dofi theme, which is, or I guess the Dofi itself was an extension of like what Bonnie used to do, where you just have this ability that generically protects your life and plays for late game. And we do know that Blackbeard has one of the best high-end drops in the game, like locking a character being a massive blocker and even negating the leader for the turn. There's like so many potential payoffs with that, that reaching this chain of 10 costs by itself might be good enough of payoff. I'm not sure though, because your opponent is going to have a lot more freedom compared to the playstyle against the usual Blackbeard, because there's no discard ability to deny on plays, which, to be fair, I think that makes the design a whole lot more healthier and less frustrating to face. And we will see if that frustration is made up by the existence of all the on-KO effects and the yellow triggers, which a lot of them within design of the Blackbeard deck do have draw a card to negate the actual discard. So you're effectively just filtering a card and getting some effect, and the effects that we have seen so far seem to be on the better side. So, because let's remember, you don't necessarily have to have Blackbeard cards in your life to trigger. You can have anything in your life, and then you just redirect the attack into your leader and reap the benefits. So there's definitely going to be a lot of nuance to both building and playing this deck and playing against it. So I understand why people are so excited and hyped to build it. I guess we'll talk about that more when we go through the support cards.
I'm one of the people that's excited and hyped to build it. I'm a big hater of Teach. I've actually I've pulled the Teach leader from like 3 packs, sold it immediately. I pulled the silver SP rarity Teach, sold it immediately. And like it was like cosmic forces were telling me to play Black Teach, and I completely ignored them. And this time I feel like maybe I should listen a little bit. This has had the exact opposite effect of purple Sengoku for me, where I was excited for Sengoku and not really excited all too much for Teach, and now it's the opposite. And the reason for that was because obviously the first comparison is going to be purple Doflamingo, but the cost of this felt a bit heavy to me. Having to trash a card, specifically trash a card with a trigger from your hand to be able to redirect the attack, meant that you were limited in the number of times that you could really do this throughout the game. But that was before we got to see a lot of the on-KO effects, which a lot of them redraw a card, which then means that you're not only cycling, because you're trashing a card that you don't need from your hand for the most part, and then getting a new draw, but you're also getting an extra on-KO effect from some of those characters. Like, I don't know if this is really worth like really delving into, but for example, Pizarro, for example, on KO, it's a 1-cost 2k counter, which on KO draws 1 card and then plays a Hachinosu or full of lead from your hand or trash. So like effectively free redirection on an attack, which is already pretty good as we've seen with Purple Doflamingo, while also having an extra benefit. So that sort of thing is quite nice. And then like Purple Doflamingo, you don't have to redirect the attack into smaller characters to reap the benefits of the on-KO effect, but you can also redirect it into your larger characters. And Teach notoriously has a very powerful 10 cost, the 10 cost 12,000 power Teach, which negates a character, the opponent's leader, during that turn, as well as being a blocker. With your leader effect is going to be stopping 3 attacks basically from the turn that it's played. So if you can manage to get to that point, I think that this deck is going to be very scary, one that I'm very excited for. And I do think that a lot of it's just going to be if you can manage to get to the point where you can start to spam the 10 cost Teaches, because if you do, I mean, it's just 10 cost Flamingo on crack.
I'm not sure if you have enough space for this in the deck, but you can also just play 9 cost Boa and 10 cost Teach in the same deck. So just food for thought. But yeah, it's cringe. But we'll talk about the support here. I think it's quite powerful. The first one is San Juan Wolf. It's a 4-cost 5k, 1k counter. On KO, if your leader is Blackbeard Pirates, draw a card. So like Hrvoje was talking about with that free rebate. Then up to one of your leader or character's base power becomes 7k during this turn. So we do have a jail free button. And because we have cards with triggers in this black-yellow Teach deck, the trigger on this one is activate this card's KO effect or on KO effect. So we have a way to become a 7k leader all of a sudden. This is the survivability this deck needs. I'm not sure if it needed it this much, to be completely honest, just because with like a lot of the blockers that you'll have, you're not going to need to become a 7k unless you go super late into the game, just because like you can just block one of the swings and redirect another. And how often does your opponent have 3 7k swings? But this is still like a very useful card all the same. Let's go through all 3 of the cards that I think are like really important to talk about, and we can kind of talk about their role in the format as a whole. The next one's the Shiryu, which is the SR for this deck. It's a 6-cost 8k in yellow. It's a brick. On play, you may trash 1 card from your hand, add up to 1 Blackbeard Pirates type card with a cost of 6 or less from your trash to the top of your life cards face up, and trigger draw 2 cards. Put 2 cards on anything, and I'm super happy. But they also printed, importantly, the card that makes this deck good, or at least playable in 2NL, which I think is really important, which is a 1-cost Doc Q. It's a 1-cost 0k power, 2k counter. On KO, if your leader has the Blackbeard Pirates type, draw 1 card, and KO up to 2 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less. And the trigger is activate this card's KO effect. So, all in all, I do think that these 3 cards kind of create this really powerful engine of just card advantage, stopping your opponent going from super wide, and making sure you're like very, very resilient in the mid game from a lot of your opponent's aggro. So I think that what they've printed so far does give this deck enough tools to make sure that it doesn't die too quickly. But obviously, the more the merrier, obviously. And we need a few more trigger cards to make it a little bit easier to use leader effect. But all 3 of these spoilers that I kind of mentioned, there's obviously the Pizarro that Kai also mentioned. But I think all of these are quite powerful tools to make this deck kind of go over the top. Kai, any of those cards super exciting for you, or just kind of all good stuff in this powerful deck?
I mean, the Shiryu is just really nice in my opinion. Like, yes, you do have to trash 1 card, so it is like if you compare it to a thing like the 8-cost Moria, there is a little bit more of upfront cost, I guess, and also you don't have the benefit of being able to play the character onto the board. But it's a 6-cost 8,000, which we talked about just being a very solid stat line while being able to heal you in this deck. Allows you to also choose what trigger effect you want to add to your life as well, whether it's putting the San Juan Wolf to make your leader 7k, which, although a little bit less powerful when it comes out of your trigger because you've already taken the first life, but just being able to put himself, Shiryu, into your life to just infinitely draw cards or even not even trigger the effect, to just infinitely play Shiryu. There's like, I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of weird lines that you can take with this that are very matchup specific, and because you have that Hachinose to get exactly the cards you need into your trash, you also have the consistency, and you have this Shiryu being able to pick up anything from your trash. I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting things that this deck can do, which I think we're just going to have to see. But I think that this card especially is going to introduce like a lot of flexibility to the deck.
So the way I see it, currently all of the deck's tools are geared towards reaching that late game. And the fear I have about this type of design is that like a lot of these mid-game units are not going to really be doing anything. So luckily we have a lot of like old Blackbeard support to fall back on to try and control the board while still establishing something meaningful, because when you're not denying on plays, your deck becomes vulnerable to a lot of stuff. So you're effectively playing a 6-8 guy, and yeah, he does heal you, and that heal can be either, you know, to get the trigger effect or to actually get the card back to your hand, to have to be able to play it next turn, something like 5-cost Kuzan, which is obviously one of the strongest cards the Blackbeard deck has access to. But yeah, it doesn't impact the board immediately beyond its stat line. So if something like Jozo hits it, if something like if any combination of cards removes it, freezes it, which decks now have access to, you are falling behind on board, and you are going to get to the late game, but then you are really putting all your eggs into this top end basket where you hope the Teaches and I guess the Boas will be enough to turn the game around. So I'm curious how the deck is going to patch up those holes, because yeah, Shiryu on paper reads like an insane card. Like 6-8, you heal, you basically set up whatever you want. And similar to Pizarro, you have this insane defensiveness, you have the 2Ks with good triggers that like slow down the opponent's like weenie game plan, but none of it really answers what decks have played in the meta in the last like 5 or 6 sets, which is like setting up these 4-6, 5-7, 6-8 bodies on the board and just using board superiority to like whittle you down as soon as possible. Because when you think about it, even yellow now can go very wide, and something like the Sky Luffy can potentially just like kill your Blackbeard if you block carelessly or use one of the ground death counter winds or something. So I think the deck will be very difficult to build at first, because you need to decide on the direction, and just the mono Blackbeard already had a lot of problem choosing its direction given the meta. Like it was a very famous sentiment of the deck where you cannot play Blackbeard into the meta blind. You need to see how the meta forms so you know what you need to do. Like, do you need to play the removal Blackbeard? Do you need to play like the Burgess and Raise Blackbeard? Like, the deck is going to be very, very demanding to both pilot and build, I expect. So the support looks good if you're wanting to play a slow game, but are we wanting to play the slow game? That's the part I'm not sure about.
To be fair, these cards, we haven't seen all the SRs yet, we haven't seen any of the secret rares. You look at a deck like Ace, we haven't seen an Ace SR or Secret Rare. If you look at Teach, we haven't seen a Teach. So I'm sure that there's going to be probably maybe even the main support for these decks hasn't really been revealed yet. So definitely something to look forward to. And as more cards are revealed, I'm sure that we'll recongregate and talk about the decks as a whole and how we think they may actually end up stacking up into the meta. But I understand that Hrvoje has to go a little bit soon, so maybe we'll get some quick thoughts at the end of the video. Yonas, because you've been so kind with introducing all the cards and letting us talk first, how do you feel like maybe these new decks may interact with the current OP15 meta that we have?
So, to be completely candid, I don't see a world where any deck aside from the Teach deck can compete against a Nell. And I feel like a Nell is just at the forefront of the current OP15 meta. I just think that a lot of these decks aren't well equipped to deal with a lot of the aggression that a Nell can create, and don't have great answers to the 10-drop Enel or even like the other mid-range sets that the deck can create. So I'm pretty unoptimistic with a lot of these cores. Obviously, they're like pretty powerful in a lot of ways, and sometimes you can kind of like get a little bit under them. But Lightning Dragon kind of can stop almost everything that like both Buggy and like Blue Green can ever deal with. And like swinging a bunch of 6s is probably going to destroy the Ace deck altogether. So honestly, I'm not super happy with any of them, but I do think that the Teach deck has like a real chance of like destroying the Enel deck if it has the right tools. I just don't know what that exactly looks like at the moment. So hopefully it ends up being like productive and not really like cringeworthy or like toxic in a way, because I think Teach can always be that way, where it's just like a level of inevitability that's just very unfun to play against. But I do think that deck has like the most promise to like warp the OP15 or OP16 meta in a very fun way.
I mean, we haven't seen support really, so I don't want to make any conclusive judgments, but I will say I expect nothing, and I mean nothing from Ace and from Luffy. Like those two, I would already sign off. Like I'm not sure what they need to get. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm really not happy with the outlook on them. With Yamato, we really haven't seen like anything that would showcase the possible potential of the deck. So maybe something pops up. For Buggy, I'm optimistic. Like Sengoku and Buggy potentially have the ability to deal really well with like the non-NL decks in the meta, just because of all the tools and the body size they're going to have access to. But yeah, Teach does naturally look like the strongest option, just because of the raw individual card power that it's going to bring to the table compared to all these other synergy-based decks, which always take more time to solve. So yeah, I agree with Jonas. Like the Teach is the one I would expect to have the highest potential out of the gate, but part of me really hopes Buggy can swing those fists.
We'll have to see play out, because right now it seems like we're in NL's paradise, and if that doesn't change, then I mean, people are going to start to feel the effects of that. So in any case, I thank you guys for joining me once again on the All Blue podcast, and for our listeners or viewers as well. Make sure to let us know what you think about it, this format, specifically your thoughts on these leaders. Maybe you were completely wrong. Tell us how Red Ace is going to break the meta. And as always, regardless of if it's positive or negative, we appreciate your feedback, and make sure to ask us any questions, because we may answer it next time. Thank you guys for joining us in the All Blue podcast, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.